And we are back for part two of the MLB Draft preview. Pleased to be joined by Joe Doyle from Overslot. Bill Mine is sidelined today. He's on the short-term IL. But Joe, I know, is bringing the heat. We're here in the bottom of the ninth, man. Like less than 48 hours to go. Joe, this is the busiest time of the year for you. You're about to hop off to Philly for the draft. What are things like right now? Because this is the point in time where leading up to the draft, those 2 or 3 days, that window leading up, a lot of chatter, a lot of buzz. What are some things you're hearing? What do listeners need to look for in terms of maybe surprises in the draft, some stuff you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting close to the finish line. Teams are kind of starting to figure out, magnets are going on the whiteboard as we sit here on Thursday afternoon. Teams are kind of starting to figure out how they feel about guys, like actually feel about guys. I know we talk about like March, April, May. Oh, this team loves this guy. Oh, this team loves this guy. I don't think teams really have it figured out until this week every single year. So in terms of surprises, I think it's going to be relatively straightforward for the first 2 picks in the draft. I think the Twins, the Pirates, I think the Giants, I think there could be some wrenches and wrinkles that go into those picks that kind of throw this first round for a loop, or at least throw the top 10 for a loop. We'll see if that actually happens. But in terms of the top of the draft, I think Rock goes 1. I think Greedy goes 2, and we'll see what happens from there.
Let's get started talking about Tegan Kuntz. You mentioned we talk about surprises, and I don't know if this is so much a surprise to you or me, but I want to talk about Tegan Kuhn's development this past season, a year where he more than doubled his workload. And you pointed out early in the season, going back to February, March, you said, hey, things are looking like Tegan is becoming more dynamic as a pitcher. And while the service stats didn't necessarily reveal that, we saw with a full sample of the season, he popped a nice sweeper, a little bit of curveball. We know about the fastball command. He talked to the media a lot about developing a feel for the change. And in all that, the 15 strikeout performance here at Lindsey Nelson Stadium in Knoxville was one for the record books. And just talk about his development and what that means for Tegan Kuntz in the first round of this draft.
Yeah, I think Tegan is kind of in that 50-50 coin flip right now for the first round. Like I think Tegan, just because of the question marks on the breaking ball, as you mentioned, Logan, he was trying to build a breaking ball all year. He was trying to get to a sweeper, he was trying to get to a curveball. 2025, he had the bullet slider. I think teams are looking at that going, okay, we're going to have to rebuild this. We're going to have to actually build a breaking ball. He's not going to be this quick to the majors, guy. And so I think for that reason, he's lost a little bit of steam from where he was early in the season. And then, look, it was weird that he missed a start here and that he was in the bullpen here. And, I don't think Coach Elander really came out and gave a transparent reason as to why that was actually happening. We heard fatigue. We heard, off the record, outside sources said there's some arm soreness. We heard that they want to just get other guys opportunities to pitch in the rotation. It was all weird. Like that 2 or 3 week stretch was just strange. Look, I think Tegan Kuntz at his best, when he's really feeling himself, has one of the best fastballs in the class, especially when he works it to the top of the zone. One of the more confounding things for me with Tegan this season was in February and March and early April. I don't know if he was being instructed to pitch low in the zone with that fastball, but man, when he elevates it, it's so nasty. At his best, it's a plus fastball. I think there are questions about the breaking ball. I think there are questions about how the changeup plays off of his entire arsenal, but it's a good body, it's good frame, good projection, competitive kid. I think he's going to do just fine. I'd be stunned if he fell out of the top 40 picks.
And this was a development this past season with Josh Reynolds, and quite honestly, some of the other Tennessee pitchers struggled to take their game to the next level. But in comes Austin Knight, Josh Elander's first hire, right? And what do you think about this marriage with Austin Knight taking over the pitching department at Tennessee? What does he offer?
So I think what Austin Knight is going to have to do, and this has been an issue for Tennessee going back to the Tony Vitello days. I think Austin Knight is going to have to teach these guys how to throw a breaking ball. And they've been really good at that at East Carolina. It's been one of their strengths, spinning the baseball. Austin Knight had guys at ECU that didn't have particularly strong spin traits. Trey Savage couldn't spin the ball. Ethan Norby, didn't show up being able to spin the baseball. I think when he comes over to Tennessee, the prerogative is going to be, we've got guys that have velocity. We've got guys that can throw strikes. Austin, we want you to tinker with sequencing. We want you to tinker a little bit with pitching backwards and where to command the baseball to get the most value. I think in college baseball these days, and this has been an issue, it was an issue for Tennessee in 2026, you got to strike people out. The ball goes too far. Everything is too juicy. You can't play this ground ball in play, let your defense do the heavy lifting as much as you can in professional baseball. So Austin Knight, I think, is going to do a nice job, come in, teach these guys how to get outs on their own on the mound. But the big thing is just develop that breaking ball, because it's been a struggle. Marcus Phillips wasn't able to develop a wipeout breaking ball. Tegan Kuhns was never able to get to that wipeout breaking ball. So we'll see whether or not they can take the next step. They've got obviously some excellent clay to work with, and it'll be a challenge.
In terms of the Tennessee commits in this draft, you talk about Austin Knight, his ability and his acumen to get that going with the breaking pitches with these profiles. The first name that sticks out to me in terms of the pitchers, Caden McCarthy. We've seen the tumbling changeup. We know the velo potential on the fastball. And I'm just thinking, man, that's a match made in heaven if he makes it to campus and works with Austin Knight to develop those breakers. Can this happen? Does he have a chance to work with Austin Knight, in your opinion?
I think there was at least a small chance of Caden McCarthy ending up at Tennessee before he went to the combine. And then he went to the combine.
He's one of the ones that popped. Yeah.
It was 15 to 20 pitches. It was 97 to 99. It was all over, like commanding the zone wherever he wanted it to go. He was excellent. It was 4 pitches. It was strikes. It was fastball velocity, arm speed, unique release traits. I don't think Caden McCarthy is going to get out of the second round, and I think he's going to get a lot of money. That being said, and you might have been, teeing this up for whoever's next, I think Gannon Grant also went to the combine and was ripping over some 3,200 RPM breaking balls that could be very disgusting under Austin Knight. I think he's a guy that I think is more likely than not to make it to campus because there's more relief risk with Gannon Grant, but that's the type of arm that you can get into the bullpen right away, perhaps develop into a starting pitcher in 2028, 2029, and really do some damage. So yeah, that would be a name that I would circle and be excited for potentially getting to school.
And speaking of that range, you mentioned McCarthy in the second round, and you've talked about this on your podcast, Joe, where you can look at any board, whether it's Overslot, Baseball America, MLB Pipeline. Once you start to get into the double digits, and you can go dozens and dozens of spots, and particularly with, let's call it the 50 to 100 range on any given board, Tennessee has a lot of targets in that range, right? So, like, whose status out of those guys do you think is most volatile in terms of signing this weekend with an organization versus landing in Knoxville?
Well, I think I don't think the case is closed on. I know this isn't 50 to 100. I don't think the case is closed on Jared Grinlinger. I mean, his brother. I think his brother being on campus and him being so young. I mean, Jared Grinlinger could go to Tennessee, be draft eligible in 2029, and barely be 20 years old as a 2029 draft eligible junior. And I think the ability, the opportunity to play with his brother for a year is enticing. So, I think his number is awfully high. I think if Jared Grinlinger doesn't get top 20 money, he's happy to go to Knoxville. I think it's more likely than not that he goes pro, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. Guys that are lower than that I think have a good chance to get to campus. I think Cole Kenninger is going to get to campus because I don't think he showed enough on offense or on the mound to really staple his name in the MLB draft. Now, I have him at 108 on my board. I still think he's an excellent talent. I still think it's an elite body. I just think it needs a coat of paint. It needs a little bit of polish. My understanding is Jake McCoy is going to be at Tennessee. The NIL deal that he signed makes it so either he's going to be a second round pick, which I think is hard for a team to swallow considering his entire sample is essentially on the Cape, and it was like 12 innings, maybe less than that. And otherwise, he's struggled in college baseball. So I think he's going to make it to campus. I think he's immediately going to slot in as a weekend starter. Then some of the other guys, I think Jack Dugan's got a really big number. I think he's going to be a tough sign. He might make it to campus. I think a lot of these guys honestly are going to make it to campus. I think Sean Sullivan is kind of a coin flip. He's undersized, but he can throw really hard. He's on the older side. I think Sean Dunlap is going to get to campus. I think Cody Bochelle is going to get to campus. Ricky Ojeda, I understand, has a pretty nice savory deal with Tennessee. I think he makes it to campus. Drew Christine, it could be the best college pitcher in the country in 3 years. I think he's going to get to campus. Like, the things he can do from the left side of the mound are phenomenal. He just hasn't found his velocity yet. So to answer your question, like, I think Coach Elander and I think the entire staff at Tennessee has put together a really talented class of players that they don't have a lot of risk of losing. I'm sure there's going to be a couple of surprises in here that I mentioned that, teams just scoop up. But in general, I think this is a pretty exciting, pretty enticing class that should get to school.
That's an interesting dynamic you bring up with Jared, because if he does sign, you're looking at working on the complex leagues for a couple of seasons, right? And there's a door open there, depending on the organization, to kind of get some two-way action going, right? So, how much do you think that's a factor in a weight on his thoughts?
I haven't heard that as much with Jared. There were guys, Mason Pike, for example, in the 2025 draft, who it was, I'm going to two-way. I'm not going to give up hitting, or I'm not going to give up pitching. Like, I want to do both. I haven't heard that with Jared. From what I can understand, he's good with doing either one. Whatever an organization decides or thinks that he's going to be best at, he's willing to go down that road. So, and in terms of, like how quickly he makes his full season debut, I think if he's a hitter, you could see him at low A in 2027, just because the bat to ball skills are so strong. If he's a pitcher, though, I mean, I would imagine whoever drafts him is going to be hyper careful with him to ensure that they don't break him. So, like I said, I've said this on my podcast. I've said it on Twitter. I've said it everywhere. I think if a team drafts Jared Grinlinger, they will be drafting the outfielder. They will be drafting the bat. I have a hard time seeing Jared Grinlinger getting $5.5–6 million as a left-handed pitcher, just because of how volatile that demographic is in any draft. So, I expect him to go in the early teens. I expect it to be as an outfielder, and I expect he'll probably be in low A at some point in 2027.
Now let's talk about the most likely sign for this weekend that you can pretty much put a stamp on. Trevor Condon, who is right there with Grinlinger, a lot of the draft boards. Is there a taste for Condon in the top 10?
I don't think so. I haven't heard him in the top 10. I have heard him all over the place behind that. He is essentially a carbon copy of everything that the Diamondbacks have targeted in the past. Like, I'd be surprised if they weren't in on that. I think the Cincinnati Reds would love that middle of the order profile, middle of the field profile. I think his swing decisions and bat to ball skills really fit in Detroit. So I don't think he's going to last outside of the top, we'll call it 20, 21 picks. But yeah, if there was a guy that has any relation to the University of Tennessee in the 2026 draft, there is a 0% chance Trevor Condon is going to Knoxville.
Now let's bring in some Tennessee ties here with this one. We talked off air. We brought up the Giants, and in Vitello's first season as MLB manager, Buster Posey is going into his second draft. It's a hot press situation right now in San Francisco. What's the best course of action for Posey and company? What's the most likely scenario?
That's a good question. I think the Giants will go with a position player. I don't feel enormous conviction with that, but I do think they're going to go with a position player. Who they will go with, man, your guess is as good as mine. I've heard everyone under the sun in this spot. I think if Von Lackey finds a way to pick 4, he's going to be a Giant, which is it's a possibility. I think if Jacob Lombard is there for the right price, the Giants chasing a potential organizational pillar, cornerstone, a guy that has every tool that just needs to learn how to hit. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I will say, if I know one thing about what the Giants are trying to do here, they're not going to rush it. They're going to build this thing the right way. I'm as surprised as you are that they are struggling as much as they have. But when you're playing in a division with the Padres, who were red hot over the first 70 games of the season, and you're playing with the Dodgers, and you're playing with a team like the Rockies, who were off to a hot start to begin the season. They swept the Giants, if I'm not mistaken, in April. Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to take the best position player available. I think it's going to be Jacob Lombard. I think there's a chance it's Jackson Flora, but man, I don't feel great about prognosticating that one at all.
How pivotal is this draft for Posey? And also, Vitello's affected too. I mean, it's going to take Vitello to stay in the majors for a few years to really, get a good measure. But, I wasn't thrilled about this San Francisco roster. I wasn't too crazy about it to begin with. But I really feel like this draft is pivotal for Posey. And like, how long can Vitello hang in that market? How long can Posey hang in that market? A market where he was a star-studded player. I mean, he is Giants Hall of Famer.
I think for Buster, I don't think the draft carries any weight. And I don't think for Vitello, the draft carries any weight at all either. I mean, Vitello's in his first year with the team. I think they're going to give him at least 2.5 years. It doesn't sound like the culture or the clubhouse has been lost in San Francisco. So, there's no worry there. I think Buster is still, fully trusted. I think some of the public relations issues that he's dealt with over the course of the last 3 weeks look worse than the baseball stuff, to be completely honest with you. When you lose the fan base, listen, that's one thing about being an executive front office leader. When the fan base is affording you the ability to make baseball decisions, you have time. When you lose favor of the fans, and this is San Francisco, California, where these decisions are being made, when you lose the fans that come to your games, that's when a change starts getting talked about. So I still don't think Buster is anywhere close to being let go. I would assume that he's going to have at least through the middle of the 2027 season. But I'll tell you what, if 2027 comes around and the Giants, who have, they have heavy wallets, they can bring in stars. If they struggle out of the gate in 2027 and that Rafi Devers contract is still just burning a hole in San Francisco,
it'll burn down the Golden Gate Bridge.
Might have to have a difficult conversation in June or July next year.
Good stuff. Let's go back to, the depth that we talked about kind of in the top 100, top 150. I found an interesting bucket here with some guys, some third basemen, 2 from the SEC, 1 from the ACC, Daniel Cuvée, Trey Phelps, and Henry Ford. What's your flavor? Mine is the strawberry ice cream cookie at Crumble this week. That's what I'm going to be having on draft day. But if you were looking for a bat first third baseman and you had to pick between the 3, who are you going with?
So I don't think any of them are third basemen at the end of the day. I think they are. I think Henry Ford is a right fielder. I think Daniel Cuvée has a shot to play third base, but I have a hard time seeing Daniel Cuvée on a big league roster not being pushed into another role by a more premium defender at that spot. And I'm trying to remember, who was the other one?
Trey Phelps.
And Trey Phelps, all due respect to Trey Phelps, this was the first year that he was actually able to carve out a role on the dirt, carve out a role on defense, really. I personally think Phelps is a left fielder. I think Henry Ford is a right fielder. I think Cuvée could end up being a first baseman. If I was to take my pick out of all 3 of those, I would definitely take Henry Ford. Henry Ford's the best athlete. Henry Ford has the best approach to hitting. He's got the best bat to ball skills. He's got, at least under the hood, close to the same amount of raw power as some of the other guys that you mentioned. He doesn't get to it as easily and as comfortably as the other 2, and that's a swing plane thing that can be worked on. But I think Henry Ford still has a little bit of projection left in his physicality and his frame. Mm-hmm. I think he's the best runner. I think he's got the arm to play right field. So I think I have Henry Ford on my board in the 3rd or 4th round, and that would be the high water mark for all 3 candidates, I think.
Speaking of Ford, he really was behind the 8 ball towards the beginning of the season with sickness and things like that. How do you think the scouting departments with organizations that are looking for a profile like Henry Ford, I mean, it's got to be a little bit affected, right? But is that a major factor in your opinion? Because I mean, it was good numbers, but it felt nondescript in a way.
Yeah, like I said, I think Henry Ford just kind of struggled to get to his powers, as you'd like to see him to get that raw power a little bit more. If I pull up his numbers, he pretty much had the exact same year under the hood as he did last season. I mean, he had a exit
Yeah.
velocity of 114 max. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's plus raw power. That's the chance to hit 25 homers at the next level. Plenty of in zone contact, plenty of out of zone contact. Hit velocity well. Had a lot of barrels, but the thing with Ford was it's a super aggressive approach. He's going to struggle to hit the elevated fastball. He's going to struggle to, not swing at sliders that are off the plate. So there's obviously some risk with Ford in terms of the hit tool. I think there's an awesome chance. I think there's a better chance than not that he's a 230 hitter at the next level. But if he's a 230 hitter who is getting 600 plate appearances and hitting 25 home runs from the right side, I think you feel pretty good about that wherever he plays in the field, even if it's a DH.
All right, let's talk about the Braves for a second here in a moment. I'll let you tee one up for the Mariners. The Braves, man, finally 2 picks in the first round, thanks to Drake Baldwin. They get that 26 PPI pick. Hearing a lot about Gio Rojas connected to the Braves with the first pick. We saw last year in Atlanta, they switched up script, went with Tate Southacene, up the middle Demon, and then they're developing guys, some deep dives, Eric Hartman, and then international signing, Juanio. This farm system looks so much more healthy than it did just a year ago. So I'm interested to see what the Braves can do with these 2 picks. How do you think they play that sequence there in the first round?
So I think the 9th pick in the draft is like perhaps the single best spot in terms of let's see who falls.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's this grouping of like 6 or 7 players that fit in the top 8. And there's question marks on all of them. And it only takes a team or two to jump onto an underslot deal in one of those picks for a name to fall. Right. I think if Drew Burris gets to 9, I have a hard time seeing the Braves walk away from the local boy who's like a 330 hitter with 60 homers in the ACC. Like, that's a tough fan favorite, great player, sells jerseys. Like, I would have a hard time seeing them walk away from that. But the inverse of that is what happens if Jacob Lombard is there at pick 9, which I don't think is out of the question. What happens if, there's I don't know, take your pick, like Eric Booth. Like, what if Eric Booth falls because there's just a run on college performers above that? So I think, assuming all of the top names are off the board and Drew Burris remains, I think Drew Burris is going to be the pick at pick 9. And then I think what the Braves would hope is that Drew Burris gives them a little bit of a hometown discount, maybe 5% off of that slot. They save 400 grand, 500 grand, and they can go and they can, pull Gio Rojas down to 26. I don't know who they're going to be attached to at 26. I've heard Kate Townsend quite a bit in that spot. I've heard AJ Gracia if he falls into that spot. But the Braves are positioned to do quite a number on their farm system at the top of this draft.
The Mariners are a couple spots ahead of the Braves at 26. Seattle sits at 24. First of all, shout out to Peyton Alford. He continues to put in some work. Peyton stopped by the area this past off season and got to see some high school athletes and students and speak to them. So that was really cool. And hopefully he gets the call up this year. Seattle, looks like they're poised to make a run. But Joe, what do you think the Mariners do with pick 24? It seems like is that a landing spot for Tegan Kuhns?
I personally don't think it is. I think Seattle has always been a team that attaches itself to the breaking ball and attaches itself to physicality and size. And while Tegan Kuhns is 6'3", it's a pretty narrow frame, right? Like, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a 6'3" that's going to carry 220 pounds anytime soon. So I don't think that Tegan Kuhns is going to be a fit for them, at least in the first round. If he falls to 65 for some godforsaken reason, they're not going to let him get past that point. But I think they're more in the camp of like Logan Hughes, the outfielder at Texas Tech, or one of these bigger body starting pitchers. If Cam Flukie falls to 24, I think maybe the tumble stops there. I think As an underslot deal, Notre Dame righty Jack Raydell makes a lot of sense. So I would expect them to go with a player that has a more established breaking ball, has a bigger frame to carry starting pitcher, weight. And if they don't have their guy there, I think they take a bat like Logan Hughes.
Joe, one last thing before we go. It was about 21 years ago, I think. Was it Jim Callis that went 18 for 18 on a mock?
That was like 2011. It was incredible.
It wasn't
a
that
while
far back.
ago.
Okay.
No, I don't remember the exact year. I know it was a relatively long ways back, but in today's day and age, I feel like that's impossible. Like I'll put a feather in my cap. I've won the last 2 Cespedes Family Barbecue mock draft things or whatever. And those have like 12 different writers, 12 different analysts on them. Yeah. I think I've gotten 6 right. And I think I've gotten like 8 right over the course of 40 picks.
Yeah, no, the one before
for Jim
that
to get
was
18 in a row.
Yeah, Dan Zielinski got like, what was it, 9 the year before your 2-year run. Just phenomenal. But the reason I bring that up, you put in the work and dedication to go 37 for 37 in this draft. I'll even throw in the sandwich rounds. So you do yeoman's work, man, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time, folks. Go check out Joe Doyle at Overslot. Joe, tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Joe Doyle, MILB, and then overslotbaseball.com. If you're a draft and prospect sicko and you want to see, StatCast type tables for even the high school kids in this class, I think that's the spot to be. I'm pretty proud of it.
It's good work, good stuff, and you're also making some changes in terms of, because I know you've got the podcast Patreon that goes out multiple platform, and then the writing. You have something in the works to kind of combine those worlds, right?
Yes, thank God. The podcast is going to be housed on overslotbaseball.com. It'll be working its way away from Patreon in August. Those two systems just do not want to communicate with one another. So we're finally gonna combine them.
Well, you've done a great job of communicating with us today, and I can't thank you enough for the time. Go enjoy Philly, Joe.
All right. Thanks, Logan.
Thank you, sir.